Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the shop. It is officially October up here in Michigan, so that means more time in the basement. It is a beautiful day outside, mid 70s, bright blue sky, and 40-mile-an-hour wind. Damn it. Oh well. So all that meant was spending some more time down in the shop. So since the last video, I can't remember exactly where I left off, but as you can see, for the most part, we have a pretty much completed Cap 21 wing. So, just trying to back up in my mind where exactly I left off, because I don't remember. So where we're at this point, I got kind of bad lighting down here. Could just be what I'm seeing on the camera, I don't know. Add some more light to the subject here. Did that help? Yeah, I think it did. So what we have going on here is I did deviate from the plans a little bit on how the wing is put together. Per the plans, you just sheet the foam cores, glue them together, and then in this same pattern right here, it's kind of hard to tell, but you can see the fiberglass cloth here. It's kind of in a pattern this way and this way. And per the plans, you're supposed to put a 4-ounce cloth top and bottom on the center section, and then the rest of the entire wing and ailerons with 2-ounce glass cloth. Well, I don't want to do that because it's heavy. It's going to make it heavy, and I don't want to paint it. So I decided, which I already covered, was I inlaid spars into the foam cores and integrated a wing joiner. So by doing that, that gives me a ton of strength in this wing and a ton of strength at the center section. So once it was glued together, on the top side of the wing, I have 2-ounce cloth up here with 2 coats of resin, so it helped it, so it's nice and flowed out pretty smooth. And then I just smeared on the filler that I like to use, and then sanded it and kind of blended it into the rest of the balsa wing. And it is nice. That is a very nice transition, looks really good. And on the bottom side, let me flip this over without breaking anything. On the bottom, we will get to there in a minute. I'm just going to let that just overwhelm you with curiosity. On the bottom side, this is basically per how it's recommended on the plans. This is a 4-ounce glass cloth, but only 1 coat of resin. And then I put on the filler very heavy, blending it into the wing and sanded it. So the filler is basically what's filling in the rest of the weave. You can still feel it a little bit, and once the covering's on there, some of that weave pattern might show through the covering, but it's going to be very minor. And it's the bottom. Who cares? So that turned out well, and it is strong. Holy mackerel, it is strong. Gear mount is put in. We'll get to that in a minute. Once again, you're probably looking at that going, what the hell? Believe me, I'm looking at it thinking the same way. Doors are not installed, but they're just held in there with tape for now, just so they don't get lost or thrown away. So instead of doing what was recommended, pretend we're looking at the top of the wing. What was recommended was 2 standard servos running push rods to torque rods that come out and poke into the aileron, which makes a very, very inefficient and flimsy aileron setup. So that's why I opted to move the servos out here and put them in the doors, so that way I have a solid push rod going out to the aileron that way. Much better. Let's see what's going on out here. Trying to sit down and not fall over. So keeping with the scale detail and the actual functionality of the airplane, the wingtip counterbalances are installed, and that took some doing, not only to get them all shaped right, but to get it so it actually functioned properly. As you can see, it's got to be just right, or else it won't look good. So what is this right here? I forget what it's called. It says it right on the plans, and it's on the tip of my tongue, but you know, my brain is deteriorating fast. What this is for, and it's kind of helping out why this is up here. I guess we'll get to this. We'll get back to this piece in a minute. Let's talk about this X pattern that I have on my ailerons. What in the world is that? So even when running a servo out here, these ailerons are very, very thin. I mean, when we look at the profile, it's a very thin aileron. And what that meant is this aileron is very easy to twist. So I took 2 strips of carbon fiber sheet that I get from Deluxe Products and put them on in that crisscross formation with 2 coats of resin. And now, I mean, it's just taped at the end. So, and now it still has some play, but it's not bad. And plus, I'm going to have a push rod going to here, so it'll be pretty stiff. Now, I'm kind of trying to figure out if I want to try to hide this anymore, because even with 2 coats of resin, I took a piece of Ultra Coat and just stuck it on there to see how bad this was actually going to look. And you can definitely tell it's there through the covering, but it's not bad. And once again, it's on the bottom. So I'm probably going to leave it as is just because it's not a huge deal. But I still might take my filler and smear it on there and sand it and try to blend it a little bit more. But we'll see. Because on the bottom of the wing, it's all white with an exception of a blue piece on the leading edge. And then there's like a triangle burst piece that starts at the leading edge. And I actually will cover this entire area right here with a piece of blue. So I'm really thinking this isn't going to show up too much. And this probably wasn't all that necessary. I didn't do it to eliminate flutter. I did it to enhance the authority and the effectiveness of the ailerons themselves. Now, back to this little guy out here. This is not only a scale detail for the airplane, but it's also a functioning part. Now, when this aileron comes up, because it's thin and it's flimsy, even though that servo is pulling this aileron up, the wind out here can actually push the tip back down and twist the aileron. Now, when this comes up like this piece here is going down. So even though the air flowing over the wing is going to try to push the aileron back down, it's going to be pushing on this piece, which is now down this way, actually forcing the aileron up. So it is there for a reason. It is functional. And all in all, I think it's going to be just fine. Plus, it kind of makes it look cool. So, yeah, that's where we're at with that. The gear situation. This is interesting, to say the least. To give you a better idea of exactly what we're looking at. Now, on a Cap 21, this is my model aviation from 1992. The Cap 21, you can clearly see that the landing gear is part of the wing, and it also protrudes out from the fuselage quite a bit, which makes things a little interesting. So right here on the plan is a side view of what we're looking at. So basically I had to take a knife and I had to cut a 1 1/4 square out of the center portion of the wing right here. And then making the landing gear mount itself, which entails, what is that? I did it all out of 1/4 inch. So, yeah, it's all 1/4 inch. And then, of course, this piece right here is showing the aluminum landing gear. And it's very interesting how it all... Oh, man. Ugh. It's kind of interesting how it all works, and I'm still trying to figure it out, to be honest with you. So on the plans, you get a pattern, and I'm assuming it's for a 2-piece affair. So I transfer the pattern just to a throwaway piece of wood, and when we stick it in there, And these three lines right here are corresponding with these three holes, which are still a little bit confusing. And I put some reference lines on the wings that are showing where the end of the fuselage is, because once again, the gear is supposed to exit the wing away from the fuselage. So now I'm trying to figure out exactly where it needs to be, how far out it needs to be, because there's nothing on the plans that shows that. I'm just going by pictures of the airplane, some 3 views, and trying to figure that out. But that's beside the point. The interesting part of this is screwing the gear down. 1 or 2 of the screws here are actually what's holding the wing to the fuselage. Now in this cutaway here, let me get my pointer out. In this cutaway, you can see that we have the gear mount up inside the wing, and of course the gear leg itself, and there's 3 screws. Now, and there's a block that has to be made that's going to fill this void right here. And from this picture, it is showing that the gear legs themselves, which would be this screw and this screw, are simply going to be holding the gear into that block. They're not going through the wing. And it also has these little notches so the block can fit flush to the gear over top of the screw heads. And then it shows a 3rd screw that passes through the whole thing and through the block that holds the wing in place. So I'm looking at that going, well, that makes sense. However, this is where it gets interesting. Now, in this picture here, you can clearly see we have a mount in the back that only has 1 screw, and the mount in the front with 2 screws, which I was assuming are these ones that pass all the way through. Now, looking at this picture of the bottom of the airplane, you can see 1 hole and 2 holes. No hole in the middle. So we're seeing this one and this one, which is this hole and this hole. So what I'm thinking is going on here is this screw right here that holds the gear to the block is on the outside of the fuselage. It's further out into the wing. But this screw is passing all the way through and going into the block and the fuselage. That's what I'm thinking, or at least that's what I'm seeing in this picture right here. So I'm thinking that's how I'm going to do it. And by the looks of it, it almost looks like you can kind of see the cutout of that block. I'm thinking that the way the designer intended to do this is when you unscrew the wing, you can take out the outer screws and also remove the landing gear from the wing. So the whole thing will come apart. And I think that's how I'm going to do it, just because it's going to make it easier for transport and storage. Because it's already a 90-inch surfboard, and then once it has a set of landing gear permanently attached to it with wheel pants, now it's awkward. So what I'm thinking is that center hole that is shown right here, I don't think I'm going to do anything with that. Or actually, let me get back to that. So this hole here and this hole here, this is going to be for a 1/4-20 bolt just to hold the gear to the wood mount. And this hole here is going to be for a 1/4-20 bolt to go all the way through the wing and into the mount that's going to be in the fuselage. And the same on the other side. Now, this central hole, I think, is going to be to actually hold this cover on that does not exist yet. So to take the wing off, I would take that cover off, which would just be 2 screws, no big deal, and 1, 2 screws, and of course 2 in the back, pull the wing off. And if I wanted to go a step further, take out the outboard screws, and I can pull the landing gear off. I think that's how I'm going to do it, because then I could take the gear itself and mount them directly to the fuselage, and then that would make it easier for transport and storage. Now, One thing I am going to change is I'm not going to do a two-piece. As soon as I get this figured out exactly how I want it, I'm going to make a solid piece of aluminum. Um, just right now, I'm having a hard time gauging how it's supposed to look because all I can see is the wing. So I am going to, hold on. Damn it. I am going to ixnay this for now. And the gear situation will probably be the last thing I do. Because I want to be able to have the wing on the fuselage so I can put the gear in place. And I'll make a better piece out of wood so I can actually sit the airplane down, actually screw some wheels to it, and see what it's going to look like. Because right now, I just can't tell. It's too difficult to tell. And these two marks right here, this plate that's in here is a lot longer than what the gear actually is. So even once the gear is in place and this central portion has a block that's removable, I need to fill in this area here with a permanent block that's going to be part of the wing, because this whole situation is longer than the gear itself for strength. Now this is entirely glued in with Gorilla Glue. There's no epoxy in here. So once I had it all glued in, there were some gaps in there. And I mean, I just hosed this thing with Gorilla Glue. And that's the expanding stuff right there. And it just completely filled that entire thing in. So it is solid. Man, I need to go get something to drink. So that is where we are at for now. Everything is looking really good. The wood for the fuselage is on its way. So as soon as I get that, I'm going to start working on it because it's getting cooler out. It's getting darker out sooner, and yeah, building season is just about here, folks. And look at me, I'm almost freaking done. Not a smart move on my behalf, but just wanted to bring you in and show you that I got some progress done on this this classic Cap 21, or Snap 21, I should say. So probably will be a while until I bring you back. I think probably for the next video there will be a fuselage. It may not be a completed fuselage, but definitely a fuselage. So until that happens, later.